Tonight, we're settling into something rather unpleasant, but in that slow, methodical way that lets your mind wander and drift. We're visiting Nero's Rome in the year 64 CE, a place where the emperor casually sets buildings on fire, where people disappear quietly in the night, and where madness moves at the sluggish pace of imperial bureaucracy. You're not a wealthy senator lounging in a marble villa. You're not a well-connected merchant with political protection. Tonight, you're simply an ordinary person, going about your daily routine in a city where the most powerful man on earth happens to be completely unhinged, where fires spread slowly through wooden tenements, and where survival depends on the mundane art of keeping your head down and your mouth shut. The year is 64 CE, and Rome sprawls lazily across its 7 hills like a great sleeping beast. The empire stretches endlessly in all directions, north to the misty forests of Germania, south to the drowsy heat of Africa, east to the ancient cities of Syria, where merchants count coins in the shade. Aqueducts carry water in their steady, hypnotic flow from distant mountains. The Circus Maximus fills slowly each morning with citizens shuffling to their seats. Everything moves with the measured pace of an empire that believes itself eternal. But beneath this sleepy routine lies something darker, something that unfolds with the gradual inevitability of a slow-spreading disease. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus has been emperor for 10 unremarkable years now, and those years have seen Rome drift almost imperceptibly from the stable dullness of Claudius's reign into something more unsettling. This is the man who 3 years ago quietly arranged for his mother Agrippina to be eliminated, not in any dramatic fashion, but through the sort of methodical planning that characterizes most imperial murders. She was stabbed to death in her villa by the sea, and Nero calmly informed the Senate that she had taken her own life out of guilt for plotting against him. The senators nodded drowsily and went back to their afternoon wine. This is the emperor who, just last year, during one of his regular domestic disputes, kicked his pregnant wife Poppaea Sabina with enough force to kill her. The death was announced as a sudden fever. The servants cleaned up quietly. Life continued with barely a pause. And this is the man who increasingly spends his evenings performing on stage, not as a private hobby, but in public theatres, singing lengthy ballads about Greek heroes while senators sit in the audience, fighting to stay awake and wondering if applauding too enthusiastically might be seen as mockery, or not applauding enough might be seen as treason. You see, Nero's particular brand of insanity doesn't announce itself with dramatic flourishes. It seeps through the city like groundwater, contaminating everything with a sort of lazy malevolence. His cruelties have a bureaucratic quality to them. Paperwork is filed, proper procedures are followed, and people simply disappear into the vast machinery of imperial administration. Take his architectural ambitions, for instance. Nero has been dreaming, in his slow, methodical way, of a new palace complex called the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. It would cover roughly 1/3 of the city, complete with artificial lakes, vineyards, and a 120-foot bronze statue of himself. The only problem is that most of central Rome is already built up with shops, temples, and tenements housing hundreds of thousands of people. But Nero is a patient man. He can wait for the right opportunity. The streets you'll walk today wind through a city where everyone speaks a little more quietly than they used to, where conversations in the bathhouses drift towards safer topics like grain prices and chariot races, where the vigils, Rome's firefighters and night watchmen have developed an unusual interest in which buildings might be considered fire hazards. There's a heaviness in the air, not just from the smoke of cooking fires and oil lamps, but from something harder to define. It's the weight of a city holding its breath, of people going about their daily routines while something vast and terrible takes shape just beyond their peripheral vision. Today you'll wake up in a third-floor room in an insula, one of Rome's towering apartment buildings that creak and sway like ships in a gentle storm. You'll shuffle down to the public latrines, wait in line for your turn at the communal facilities, and begin another day of the sort of mind-numbing routine that keeps a city of 1 million people fed, clothed, and reasonably content. You'll work manna, perhaps hauling amphorae of olive oil from the docks, or standing in a bakery kneading the same loaves you've made for years, or copying documents in some forgotten corner of the imperial bureaucracy. The work is tedious, repetitive, and essential. It's the kind of labor that lets your mind wander while your hands stay busy. You'll eat simple meals, bread and watered wine for breakfast, perhaps some cheese and olives at midday, maybe a bowl of lentil stew for dinner if you're fortunate. The food is plain, predictable, and exactly what millions of Romans have eaten for generations. You'll navigate streets that are crowded but not chaotic, noisy but not deafening. You'll nod to neighbors whose names you may not know but whose faces have become familiar over months and years of shared routine. And slowly, gradually, you'll begin to notice the small things that mark this particular year as different from the ones before. The way conversations pause when certain names are mentioned. The way some buildings seem to have more vigils than usual checking for fire hazards. The way the smoke from cooking fires sometimes seems to hang in the air a little longer than it should. Because today is July 19th, 64 CE. And while you go about your ordinary routine, something extraordinary is beginning to stir. In the shops around the Circus Maximus, beneath the great stone arches where vendors sell meat pies and cheap wine to the crowds, a small fire is smoldering. Just a routine accident. Perhaps an overturned lamp, a pot of oil heated too long. The sort of minor blaze that usually gets extinguished quickly with sand and water. But today the wind is blowing from an unusual direction. Today the vigils seem to be responding a little more slowly than usual. Today that small, ordinary fire is going to become something very different indeed. As you settle into sleep tonight, your mind heavy with the day's routine labors and simple pleasures, you're about to embark on a week that will reshape Rome itself. You'll witness the greatest fire in the city's history, 6 days and 7 nights of flames that will consume 2/3 of the city. You'll see how an emperor responds when disaster strikes his capital. You'll learn what happens when the most powerful man on earth decides that tragedy can be transformed into opportunity with the right combination of ambition and absolute ruthlessness. But all of that lies ahead. For now, there's just the gentle rhythm of daily life in the greatest city the world has ever known, where 1 million people rise each morning, go about their business and settle into sleep each night, unaware that tomorrow might be the day when everything changes. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Let your mind drift along the familiar paths of routine and repetition, and let us begin this quiet journey through 7 days that will echo through history, told at the pace of a summer afternoon, when time seems to move like honey, thick and golden and impossibly slow. You drift slowly into consciousness as the sun filters weakly through the single small opening in your wall that serves as a window. It's barely large enough for a cat to squeeze through, and the light that manages to enter is already filtered through the smoky haze that perpetually hangs over Rome like a heavy blanket. The sounds that wake you are gentle but persistent. The soft clucking of chickens in the courtyard below, the rhythmic scraping of someone sweeping steps, the distant murmur of early risers beginning their day. Your room is on the 4th floor of a 7-story insula called the Subura Heights, a building that sways gently in the morning breeze like a tree finding its balance. The Romans have perfected the art of building upward, stacking floor upon floor of small apartments to house the city's enormous population. But they haven't quite mastered the engineering needed to make these structures entirely stable. Your building groans softly as it settles into the day, a sound so familiar you barely notice it anymore. The walls around you are thin enough that you can hear old Gaius Flavius in the next room beginning his morning prayers to his household gods. His voice is a comforting drone, the same words in the same order every morning for the past 3 years you've lived here. Through the wall to your left, you can hear the gentle breathing of the family with the newborn eyes. They've been blessed with a baby that rarely cries, which makes them popular neighbors in a building where sound travels through walls like water through cloth. Your sleeping mat is stuffed with straw that you replaced just 2 months ago, so it still has some cushioning left before it compacts into something resembling a folded blanket. The wool blanket that covers you smells faintly of the sheep it came from, mixed with the wood smoke that permeates everything in Rome and a hint of the lavender oil you sometimes trade work for at the market. It's not luxury, but it's comfort of a sort, the kind of simple pleasure that makes the difference between mere survival and something approaching contentment. The floor beneath your mat is made of simple wooden planks, worn smooth by generations of tenants. There are gaps between some of the boards where you can see down to the apartment below, and occasionally a mouse will emerge from these spaces, pause to consider you with dark, curious eyes, then disappear again into the building's hidden passages. The mice are actually welcome. They eat the insects that would otherwise make your life more complicated than it already is. In the corner of your room sits your chamber pot, a simple clay vessel that you empty each morning down the communal drain. Next to it, your few possessions are arranged with the care that comes from owning very little. A wooden comb carved from boxwood, a bronze mirror, small and polished, that shows your reflection in wavering fragments, a spare tunic, folded carefully, a pair of sandals with leather straps that you've repaired twice, a small oil lamp with a reservoir barely large enough for 1 night's worth of light, a wooden cup for drinking, a leather pouch containing a few copper coins and the small lead token that identifies you as a tenant in good standing. This is your entire world, contained in a space roughly the size of a modern walk-in closet, and it represents stability in a city where many people sleep in doorways or under bridges. You pay your rent to Marcus Livius Drusus, a freedman who owns this building and 3 others like it. He's not unkind, merely businesslike. Rent on time means you stay, rent late means you leave. It's a simple arrangement that suits everyone involved. The air in your room carries the sense of the awakening city. Wood smoke from cooking fires mingles with the yeasty smell of bread baking in the ground floor bakery. There's a hint of olive oil heating in pans, the earthy scent of damp stone, and underneath it all the faint but persistent aroma of humanity living in close quarters, not unpleasant exactly, but unmistakably present. From your window opening, you can see across a narrow alley to another insula much like your own. People are beginning to appear at windows and on the small balconies that serve as outdoor space for those lucky enough to have them. A woman is hanging washing on a line strung between buildings. 2 men are engaged in quiet conversation while sharing breakfast on a tiny balcony. Children's voices drift up from the courtyard below, where the building's youngest residents are beginning their games. The rhythm of the awakening building is as familiar as your own heartbeat. Footsteps on wooden stairs as people begin their descent to street level. The creak of doors opening and closing, water being poured from jugs into basins, the soft scrape of furniture being moved. Conversations beginning in 6 languages, Latin of course, but also Greek, Germanic dialects from slaves and freedmen, and the occasional phrase in languages from the far reaches of the empire. This is how each day begins in Nero's Rome's, not with trumpet fanfares or dramatic declarations, but with the gentle accumulation of small domestic sounds as 1 million people slowly transition from sleep to wakefulness. It's comforting in its predictability, this daily ritual of emergence. The same sounds, the same smells, the same sequence of small preparations for another day of ordinary survival. But today carries something different in the air, something so subtle you might miss it if you weren't paying attention. The conversations seem to pause a moment longer than usual. There's a faint scent that doesn't quite belong, not wood smoke from cooking fires, but something sharper, more acrid. And if you listen carefully, very carefully, you might hear in the distance the sound of running feet and voices raised, not in greeting but in something approaching urgency. You stretch slowly on your straw mat, feeling your joints loosen and your muscles remember their daily tasks. Your body knows this routine by heart, the gradual transition from sleep to movement, the mental preparation for another day of work and small pleasures. There's no need to rush. Rome has been here for 800 years, and it will be here tomorrow. Time moves slowly in the greatest city on earth, measured not in moments but in seasons, not in urgent deadlines but in the steady accumulation of ordinary days. Outside your window the light is growing stronger, filtering through the ever-present haze to paint the alley walls in shades of gold and amber. It's going to be a warm day, you can tell from the way the air sits still and heavy, holding scents longer than usual. A perfect day for the kind of lazy routine that makes life in Rome bearable for ordinary people like yourself. Time to rise, time to dress, time to begin another peaceful day in the eternal city. You rise slowly from your sleeping mat, the familiar ritual of transition from rest to wakefulness unfolding at its own unhurried pace. Your body knows this routine so well that you barely need to think about it. The careful placement of feet on wooden floorboards that creak in predictable places, the gentle stretch of muscles that have spent the night compressed into the small space that serves as your entire private world. The room around you measures roughly 8 feet by 10 feet, a space that would seem impossibly cramped to most people but has become over time perfectly adequate for your needs. The walls are made of brick and timber, covered with a thin layer of plaster that has begun to crack in places, creating delicate spiderweb patterns that you've grown rather fond of. These cracks tell stories. The one near your head marks where the building settled during a particularly heavy rainstorm. 2 years ago, the longer one by the door appeared gradually over many months as the timber frame adjusted to the weight of the floors above. The ceiling slopes slightly, following the roof line of the building, and in one corner there's a small brown stain where water sometimes seeps through during the heaviest rains. You've learned to position your few belongings away from this spot, and have even come to appreciate the way the stain changes color with the humidity, serving as a kind of primitive weather gauge. Your sleeping mat takes up perhaps a quarter of the available floor space when it's spread out for the night. During the day, you roll it carefully and store it in the corner along with your blanket, transforming the space from bedroom to living area with this simple action. The mat itself is a marvel of practical design. Layers of woven straw sewn into sturdy canvas, thick enough to provide some cushioning against the hard floor but thin enough to roll into a compact bundle. You bought it from a craftsman in the Sabura market, who specializes in such things, trading 3 days' wages for something that will last you several years if you care for it properly. Your blanket is made of wool from sheep that grazed in the hills outside Rome, woven by a widow who sells her work near the Campus Martius. It's dyed a deep brown color using walnut hulls, a shade that hides stains well and doesn't show wear as quickly as lighter colors might. The weave is tight enough to keep out drafts but loose enough to breathe in the summer heat. You've mended 2 small holes that moths created during your first year of ownership, and the repair work has become part of the blanket's character, tiny patches that catch the light differently than the surrounding fabric. Against one wall stands your only piece of furniture, a simple wooden chest that serves multiple purposes. It's about 3 feet long and 2 feet wide, made of pine planks joined with wooden pegs and bound with iron straps. The wood has aged to a warm golden color, and the iron has developed a patina of rust that actually helps protect it from further corrosion. This chest serves as storage for your spare clothing, seating when you want to sit rather than lie down, a table for meals or any task that requires a flat surface, and a secure container for your few valuable possessions. Inside the chest, your belongings are arranged with the care that comes from owning exactly as much as you can properly maintain and no more. Your spare tunic is folded along the seams and laid flat to prevent wrinkles. It's made of linen that you bought from a merchant who imports cloth from Egypt, dyed a practical brown color that won't show dirt quickly. The fabric is soft from many washings, and you've reinforced the seams with extra stitching where wear is most likely to occur. Your leather belt hangs on a wooden peg driven into the wall. The leather is thick cowhide that you've treated with oil to keep it supple, and the bronze buckle is cast in the shape of a simple geometric pattern. Attached to the belt is a small leather pouch where you keep your coins and your building token, a small lead disc stamped with Marcus Livius Drusus's mark that identifies you as a legitimate tenant. Your sandals sit by the door, ready for the day's walking. They're made of good leather with bronze studs in the soles for traction on wet stone. The straps are wide enough to distribute weight comfortably, but narrow enough not to rub against your feet during long days of walking. You've replaced the straps once and resoled them twice, and they've shaped themselves to your feet so perfectly that wearing them is like wearing nothing at all. On a small shelf built into the wall sits your eating bowl, a simple piece of pottery glazed in dark green with a rim that's been worn smooth by countless meals. Next to it, your drinking cup made of turned wood, oil finished to a warm shine. A bronze spoon completes your dining implements, its handle worn smooth by your grip and decorated with a simple pattern of vine leaves. Your oil lamp is perhaps your most prized possession, a small ceramic vessel with a wick that burns olive oil to provide light after sunset. It's decorated with a relief pattern showing dolphins leaping through waves, and the clay has been fired to a warm red color. The lamp holds enough oil for about 4 hours of light, and you've learned to judge the passage of evening time by how much oil remains in the reservoir. In one corner of the chest lies your writing kit, a small wooden box containing a bronze stylus, a wax tablet for temporary notes, and a few sheets of papyrus for anything that needs to be preserved. Writing materials are expensive, so you use them sparingly, but being able to read and write sets you apart from many of your neighbors and occasionally provides opportunities for extra income copying documents or writing letters for those who lack these skills. Your grooming supplies occupy another corner of the chest, a bronze razor that you keep carefully sharpened, a small mirror polished to a bright shine, a wooden comb carved from boxwood, and a ceramic jar containing a mixture of olive oil and herbs that you use to clean your teeth and freshen your breath. This inventory of possessions might seem sparse to some, but each item has been chosen carefully for its utility and durability. You own nothing that doesn't serve a purpose, and everything you own serves its purpose well. There's a satisfaction in this simplicity, a kind of freedom that comes from not being burdened with excess. You can pack everything you own into your chest and carry it away if necessary, but you've never needed to do so. This room, this building, this neighborhood have become home in the deepest sense of the word. The morning light, such as it is, illuminates these familiar objects with the gentle affection of routine. Each item occupies its proper place, and the sight of them arranged just so provides a kind of daily comfort that marks the beginning of another ordinary day in your small corner of the vast imperial city. Your body's morning needs announce themselves with the gentle insistence that comes after a full night's rest. The chamber pot in the corner of your room has served its purpose during the night. A simple clay vessel with thick walls and a wide rim glazed on the inside to make cleaning easier. It's not elegant, but it's practical, and in a building where the nearest public facilities are a short walk away, it serves an essential function during the dark hours when venturing outside might be inadvisable. You dress slowly, pulling on your tunic and arranging your belt with the deliberate care of someone for whom these actions have become a morning meditation. The tunic settles around your body with familiar comfort, the linen soft from many washings and shaped by wear to fit your particular frame. Your sandals slip onto your feet as easily as breathing, the leather straps finding their accustomed places around your ankles. The chamber pot needs emptying, which means your first journey of the day will be down 4 flights of stairs to the building's waste disposal area. You lift the pot carefully. It's heavier than it appears, and clay has an unfortunate tendency to shatter if dropped on stone steps. The stairs of your insula are worn smooth by countless feet over many years, and you know exactly which boards creak and which ones hold firm under your weight. The stairwell is narrow, wide enough for 2 people to pass if they're both being careful, but not wide enough for any sort of hurried movement. The walls are painted a practical brown color that doesn't show scuff marks, and small oil lamps in niches provide just enough light to navigate safely even in the early morning dimness. Other tenants are beginning their own descent. You nod to Quintus Hortensius from the 2nd floor, a baker who starts his day even earlier than most, and step aside to let old Claudia Maxima pass on her way back up, her own morning ablutions already completed. The ground floor of your building houses a small shop that sells prepared foods, bread, olive oil, wine, and simple cooked dishes for those who lack cooking facilities in their rooms. The smell of baking bread drifts through the building every morning, a comforting aroma that marks the beginning of the commercial day. Marcus Antonius Rufus, the shop owner, is already at work, his large ovens heating the space and filling it with the sound of crackling fires and the rhythmic thump of kneading. Behind the shop, a narrow alley leads to the building's communal facilities. There's a drain here that connects to the larger sewer system, and a series of clay pipes that channel wastewater away from the building. The Romans have mastered the art of urban sanitation to a degree that won't be matched again for more than 1,000 years, but at the individual level, it still requires a certain amount of personal management. You empty your chamber pot into the designated area, rinse it with water from a communal basin, and begin the return journey to your room. The pot will serve you again tonight, part of the endless cycle of basic human maintenance that occupies so much time and attention in any era but is rarely discussed in polite society. But this morning your body's needs extend beyond what can be handled privately in your room. The call of nature that requires more substantial facilities sends you out into the streets of Rome toward one of the public latrines that serve your neighborhood. These facilities are marvels of Roman engineering and social organization, large, well-ventilated buildings with rows of stone seats arranged over channels through which clean water flows constantly. The latrina nearest your building serves several blocks of insulae and is usually busy from dawn until well after sunset. You join a short queue of neighbors and strangers, all waiting with the patient resignation of people whose bodily needs follow natural rhythms rather than social convenience. The wait gives you time to observe the early morning life of your neighborhood medders setting up their stalls, slaves carrying water jugs and market baskets, children running errands for their families. The latrina itself is a large room with stone benches along 3 walls. Each bench has circular holes cut at regular intervals, and beneath the benches, channels of clear water flow steadily, carrying waste away to join the larger sewer system. There are no partitions between the seats, no doors for privacy. You take your place on one of the stone seats, noting with satisfaction that the morning's flow of water has left everything clean and fresh smelling. The stone is cool against your skin, warmed only by the early morning sun that streams through the high windows. Around you, other early risers conduct their business with the calm efficiency of long practice. Conversation flows as naturally as the water beneath the benches. Gaius Marius Vento, a shopkeeper you recognize from the Forum Bararium, discusses the previous day's chariot races with a man you don't know. A woman mentions that her sister's baby is finally sleeping through the night. Someone complains mildly about the quality of the fish at yesterday's market. These conversations have a drowsy, meandering quality. People are not fully awake yet, and the topics drift from one subject to another without any particular urgency. For cleaning, you use the communal sponge attached to a stick, the tussorium. It's kept in a bucket of salt water and vinegar, which keeps it reasonably clean and provides some antiseptic benefit. The sponge is coarse sea sponge, tough enough to last through heavy use, but soft enough not to cause injury. You use it carefully, rinse it thoroughly in the salt water, and return it to the bucket for the next person. This shared aspect of bodily function might seem uncomfortable to modern sensibilities, but in Rome it's simply part of the social fabric of urban life. People conduct business deals over the latrina, catch up on neighborhood gossip, and sometimes form friendships that extend far beyond these morning encounters. There's something democratizing about sharing basic human needs. Here, at least, senator and slave are subject to the same biological imperatives. After completing your business, you wash your hands in the basin provided for that purpose, using coarse soap made from animal fat and ash. The soap doesn't smell particularly pleasant, but it does its job of removing soil and providing some protection against disease. Your hands, once clean, smell faintly of the olive oil that's used as a base for the soap. The walk back to your building takes you through streets that are coming alive with the early morning commerce. Back in your room, you turn your attention to the daily ritual of personal cleanliness, a process that in Rome requires considerably more planning and effort than simply turning on a tap. The Romans have elevated bathing to an art form in their great public thermae, but for ordinary citizens living in ordinary circumstances, staying clean is a matter of careful resource management and making do with simple tools. Your washing basin is a broad, shallow bowl made of red pottery, glazed smooth on the inside and wide enough to hold several quarts of water. It sits on a small wooden stand that raises it to a comfortable working height, and beneath it, a matching pitcher holds your daily supply of clean water. The water comes from the public fountain 2 streets away, carried home each evening in a large amphora that you keep by your door. It's clean mountain water, brought to Rome by aqueducts that stretch across hundreds of miles of countryside, but by the time it reaches your room, it carries the faint taste of clay from your storage vessel. You pour water from the pitcher into the basin, watching it catch the morning light filtering through your small window. The water is cool, not unpleasantly so, but enough to wake your skin when you splash it on your face. Romans have developed an elaborate philosophy around bathing that involves multiple stages of hot and cold water, scraping oils from the skin with curved bronze tools, and lengthy soaking in pools of various temperatures. But for daily cleanliness, cool water and careful attention to detail serve the purpose adequately. Your soap is a dense brown bar made from rendered animal fat and wood ash, produced by a small manufacturer near the Tiber, who specializes in providing affordable cleaning supplies to the working population of Rome. It doesn't smell particularly pleasant. The ash gives it a sharp alkaline scent that catches in the back of your throat, but it creates a thick lather that effectively removes dirt and oil from your skin. You've learned to use it sparingly, as it can dry your skin if applied too liberally, leaving it rough and prone to cracking. You begin with your hands, working the soap into a rich lather and scrubbing carefully between your fingers and under your nails. Your hands tell the story of your work: calluses from handling tools, small cuts from sharp edges, the permanent slight discoloration that comes from contact with various substances throughout the day. But clean hands are essential for health and social acceptability, so you give them the attention they deserve. Your face requires different treatment. The soap is too harsh for the delicate skin around your eyes, so you use water alone for this area, splashing gently and rubbing with your fingertips to remove the accumulation of sleep and the previous day's exposure to Rome's dusty air. Your teeth get attention next. A mixture of crushed pumice stone and mint leaves, applied with your finger and followed by thorough rinsing. The pumice is abrasive enough to remove food particles and surface stains, while the mint leaves your mouth feeling fresh and clean. Shaving presents its own challenges and rewards. Your bronze razor is a simple but effective tool, a curved blade attached to an ivory handle, kept sharp through regular stropping on a leather strip. Romans view facial hair as somewhat barbaric, a sign of foreign origin or questionable social status, so most men shave daily despite the inconvenience. You work carefully, using olive oil to soften your beard and provide lubrication for the blade. The process is slow and meditative, requiring attention and patience to avoid cutting yourself. Your hair receives a thorough combing with your boxwood comb, its teeth close enough together to remove tangles but not so fine as to pull painfully. Roman men generally wear their hair short and neat, styled with a small amount of olive oil that adds shine and helps control unruly strands. The style is practical rather than fashionable, long enough to provide some protection from sun and cold, short enough not to interfere with work or become tangled during physical activity. The rest of your body gets attention in sections: arms, chest, legs, feet. Each area is washed systematically, dried with a rough linen towel, and inspected for cuts, bruises, or other signs of damage that might require attention. This inspection is as important as the cleaning itself. Minor injuries that go untreated can quickly become serious problems in a world where medical care is expensive and not always effective. Your feet deserve special attention, as they carry you through Rome's streets every day, walking on stone pavements, dirt roads, and surfaces that range from smooth marble to rough cobblestones. You check between your toes for signs of fungal infection, examine your nails for ingrown edges or damage, and massage your arches and heels to relieve the tension that accumulates from constant walking. The water in your basin grows progressively grayer as you work, picking up the previous day's accumulation of dust, sweat, and the general grime that comes from living in a city of 1 million people. When you're finished, this water will join the building's waste system, eventually flowing into the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer, and from there into the Tiber River. Your clothes require their own form of attention. Yesterday's tunic goes into a pile for washing, a weekly process that involves soaking in water mixed with urine for its ammonia content. scrubbing with soap and thorough rinsing. The Romans have discovered that fermented urine is highly effective at removing stains and brightening fabric, though the process requires careful timing to avoid damage to the cloth. Today's tunic is shaken out carefully to remove any dust or insects that might have settled in it overnight, then inspected for tears or loose threads that need repair. The fabric is smooth linen, comfortable against clean skin and light enough for the summer heat that's already beginning to build even in the early morning hours. Your personal cleanliness extends beyond your body to your immediate environment. You sweep your room with a small broom made of bundled twigs, paying attention to the corners where dust and debris tend to accumulate. Your sleeping mat gets a thorough shaking to dislodge any insects or particles that have worked their way into the straw filling. The chamber pot gets a final rinse with clean water and a light coating of olive oil around the rim to prevent odors from developing during the day. This entire process of cleaning and preparation takes perhaps an hour, time that might seem excessive for such basic maintenance, but it serves purposes beyond mere hygiene. It's a daily meditation, a quiet time for planning the day ahead while your hands perform familiar, comforting tasks. It's also a form of self-respect in maintaining your appearance and cleanliness in a world that can be harsh and dehumanizing is a way of asserting your dignity and worth. Your stomach reminds you with gentle persistence that the night's fast must be broken, and your thoughts turn to the simple pleasure of your morning meal. In Rome, the first meal of the day follows patterns established by generations of practical necessity and limited resources. There are no elaborate spreads of exotic foods, no lengthy preparations requiring multiple courses. Instead, there is bread, there is drink, and there is the quiet satisfaction of nourishment provided simply and efficiently. Your bread comes from the bakery on the ground floor of your building, where Marcus Antonius Rufus has been working since before dawn to provide fresh loaves for his customers. The smell of baking has been drifting up through the building for hours now, a comforting aroma that signals the start of another day's commerce. You make your way down the familiar stairs, your few copper coins ready for the daily transaction that will provide the foundation of your morning nutrition. The bakery is warm and filled with the soft golden light of the ovens which burn continuously except for the few hours each day when they're cleaned and reloaded with fuel. Rufus himself is a third-generation baker, a freedman whose grandfather earned manumission through skilled bread-making and careful business practices. The shop represents the kind of modest success that's possible for industrious people in Rome's not wealth, certainly not luxury, but a stable living and the respect that comes from providing an essential service. The bread you purchase is panis plebeius palm bread made from a mixture of wheat and barley flour, formed into round loaves that weigh about 2 pounds each. The crust is thick and golden brown, hard enough to keep the interior fresh for several days but not so hard as to require soaking before eating. The interior is dense and chewy, with the slightly sour taste that comes from wild yeast fermentation. It's nourishing bread, filling bread, the kind of food that provides steady energy for a day of physical work. You select your loaf with the practiced eye of someone who buys bread daily, looking for the subtle signs that indicate freshness and proper baking. The crust should sound hollow when tapped, indicating that the interior is fully cooked. The color should be even, without dark spots that might indicate burnt areas or pale patches that suggest underbaking. The weight should feel substantial in your hands, promising the dense nutrition that will sustain you through the morning's work. Back in your room, you arrange your simple breakfast with the care that transforms a basic meal into a small daily pleasure. You tear the bread into manageable pieces, noting the way steam escapes from the interior, a sign that it was baked this morning rather than yesterday. The texture is exactly what you expect from good Roman bread. substantial enough to satisfy hunger, flavorful enough to please the palate, simple enough not to overwhelm your barely awakened digestive system. Your drink is wine mixed with water in the ratio that Romans have found optimal for morning consumption, roughly 1 part wine to 3 parts water. The wine comes from vineyards in the hills outside Rome, where volcanic soil and Mediterranean sunshine combine to produce grapes that ferment into a light, slightly acidic vintage perfect for daily consumption. It's not the complex aged wine that wealthy Romans drink at their elaborate dinner parties, but it's clean and healthful, free from the contamination that can make plain water dangerous in a crowded city. You mix the wine and water in your wooden cup, watching the red liquid swirl and dilute to a pleasant rose color. The Romans have learned through experience that alcohol, even in small quantities, helps prevent the intestinal problems that can result from questionable water supplies, while the dilution prevents the mental cloudiness that would make morning work impossible. The result is a beverage that's refreshing, mildly stimulating, and perfectly suited to the needs of working people. The ritual of eating proceeds slowly, without urgency or distraction. You sit on your wooden chest, using it as both chair and table, and focus your attention entirely on the simple pleasure of nourishment. The bread tears cleanly between your fingers, releasing more of its warm, yeasty aroma. Each bite requires thorough chewing mime. This is not soft modern bread that dissolves quickly in the mouth, but substantial food that demands attention and provides lasting satisfaction. Between bites of bread, you sip your diluted wine, feeling it wash away the lingering taste of sleep and prepare your mouth for more food. The wine has a clean, slightly sharp taste with hints of the herbs that grow wild in the vineyard soil, thyme, rosemary, and wild mint, that add complexity without overwhelming the basic grape flavor. This meal provides more than simple nutrition. It's a moment of peace and reflection, a brief period of solitude between the night's rest and the day's obligations. Your mind, freed from the pressing needs of hunger and thirst, can turn to the day ahead. What work needs to be done? What errands must be run? What social obligations require attention? The bread fills your stomach with the slow, steady satisfaction that comes from complex carbohydrates and plant proteins. This is food that will sustain you for hours, releasing its energy gradually rather than providing the quick burst and subsequent crash that comes from simpler foods. Your body recognizes this nourishment and responds with the quiet contentment that signals proper feeding. As you eat, the sounds of the building continue around you, footsteps on stairs, conversations in neighboring rooms, the distant noise of street vendors beginning their daily calls. These sounds provide a gentle backdrop to your meal, reminding you that you're part of a larger community of people all engaged in the same basic process of preparing for another day of survival and modest prosperity. The wine, even diluted as it is, provides a subtle warming sensation that spreads through your chest and arms. It's not intoxication. The quantity is far too small for that mime, but rather a gentle relaxation that eases the transition from sleep to full wakefulness. Your muscles feel loose and ready for work, your mind clear and focused on the immediate tasks ahead. When the last piece of bread is consumed and the last drop of wine swallowed, you sit quietly for a few moments, allowing your body to register the fact that it has been properly fed. This brief pause serves both digestive and psychological purposes, giving your stomach time to begin its work while providing your mind with a clear demarcation between the private time of eating and the public time of work that will follow. Your breakfast complete, you feel ready to face whatever challenges the day might bring. nourished in body and prepared in spirit for another day's journey through the vast, complex, occasionally dangerous, but ultimately manageable reality of life in Nero's Rome. The time has come to join the great daily migration of Rome's working population as they move from their homes to their places of labor. Your work, like that of most Romans, begins early and continues until the heat of midday makes physical exertion uncomfortable and potentially dangerous. You are a porter at the docks along the Tiber River, where goods from across the empire arrive daily to feed and supply the greatest city in the world. The walk to the docks takes you through streets that are gradually filling with purpose and activity. Shopkeepers roll up the wooden shutters that protect their establishments during the night hours. Bakers emerge from their workshops carrying baskets of fresh bread to supply the vendors who will sell it throughout the day. Slaves hurry past carrying water jugs, market baskets, and messages for their masters. The city is waking up to commerce, and you are part of this vast daily economic machinery. Your route takes you down the Via Ostiensis, a broad stone-paved road that connects the heart of Rome to its vital port facilities. The stones beneath your sandals have been worn smooth by countless feet over generations of use, and you know every uneven joint and slightly raised block that might catch an unwary step. Other workers walk alongside you, some heading to the same docks where you labor, others bound for workshops, markets, and construction sites throughout the city. The Tiber River comes into view gradually as you descend the gentle slope toward the port district. The water moves slowly here, brown with silt from the distant mountains where it originates, carrying on its surface the debris of a city and the traffic of commerce. Barges and small boats dot the water, some arriving with fresh cargoes, others departing for destinations upstream or down toward the Mediterranean port of Ostia. The docks themselves represent one of Rome's great organizational achievements. A complex system of wharves, warehouses, and loading areas that efficiently handle the enormous volume of goods required to keep 1 million people fed, clothed, and supplied with the necessities and luxuries of urban life. Grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, olive oil from Spain, silk from the distant East, all of it passes through these facilities on its way to the markets and shops of Rome. Your supervisor is Lucius Cornelius Balbus, a freedman who has worked his way up from dock laborer to overseer through 20 years of reliable service and careful attention to the complex logistics of cargo handling. He assigns you to a crew unloading amphorae of olive oil from a barge that arrived during the night from southern Italy. The work is physically demanding but not complicated. Each amphora weighs roughly 60 pounds when full, and they must be carried from the barge to the warehouse without damage. The amphorae themselves are marvels of practical design. Large ceramic vessels with pointed bottoms that allow them to be nested together for efficient transport, and sturdy handles that provide secure grip points for lifting. Each one is stamped with marks indicating its origin, contents, and the merchant responsible for its shipment. Some bear the distinctive seals of producers whose oils are particularly prized for their quality and flavor. You work as part of a team of 6 men, moving in a steady rhythm that conserves energy while maintaining the pace necessary to complete the unloading before the day's heat becomes unbearable. The work requires coordination and communication. A stumble or dropped amphora can injure workers and destroy valuable cargo. You've learned to read the subtle signs of fatigue in your fellow workers and to adjust your own pace accordingly. The olive oil you're handling represents months of labor by farmers, harvesters, and processors in the hills of Campania. Each amphora contains the pressed essence of hundreds of olives, carefully processed to preserve its nutritional value and flavor during the long journey to Rome. The oil will eventually find its way to kitchens throughout the city, where it will provide essential nutrition and flavor to countless meals. Between loads, you rest in the shade of the warehouse, sharing water from communal clay vessels and engaging in the kind of easy conversation that makes physical labor more bearable. Marcus Fabius Maximus, who has worked these docks for 15 years, tells stories about unusual cargoes he's handled, wild animals destined for the arena, precious stones from distant provinces, exotic spices that fill the air with unfamiliar scents. The rhythm of the work is hypnotic in its repetition. Lift, carry, set down, return for the next load. Your body settles into the familiar pattern of movement, muscles warming and loosening as they remember the specific demands of this particular task. There's satisfaction in the work despite its simplicity. Each amphora safely delivered represents value preserved, commerce facilitated, and your own small contribution to the vast economic system that sustains imperial civilization. The morning progresses steadily, marked not by any formal timekeeping but by the movement of shadows across the dock and the gradual warming of the air. Other work crews handle different cargoes: sacks of grain, rolls of fabric, wooden crates containing manufactured goods from workshops throughout the empire. The docks hum with activity, but it's organized activity, each crew focused on its particular task while contributing to the larger enterprise of keeping Rome supplied. Your wages for this work are modest, but reliable, minus enough to pay rent, buy food, and maintain the simple lifestyle that satisfies your basic needs without providing any luxury. The work itself, while physically demanding, offers the kind of employment security that many Romans lack. As long as goods continue to flow into Rome, there will be need for strong backs and willing hands to move them from ships to warehouses to their final destinations. As the morning's work at the docks concludes with the arrival of midday heat, you find yourself needing to traverse Rome's bustling streets for an errand that cannot wait. Your landlord, Marcus Livius Drusus, has requested that all tenants visit his office near the Forum Romanum to collect new building tokens, small lead discs that serve as proof of legitimate tenancy. The journey from the river port to the heart of the city will take you through some of Rome's most crowded and chaotic public spaces. The streets of Rome follow patterns established over centuries of organic growth rather than systematic planning. What began as footpaths between hills have evolved into the main arteries of imperial commerce, widened and paved but still following their ancient meandering routes. The Via Ostiensis leads you away from the river toward the city centre, joining other major roads that funnel traffic toward the political and commercial heart of the empire. You join a steady stream of pedestrians moving in both directions, some heading toward the docks as you've just come from, others bound for the markets, courts and temples that cluster around the Forum. The foot traffic includes people from every level of Roman society, slaves hurrying on errands for their masters, carrying water jugs and market baskets, freedmen conducting business with the careful dignity of those who have earned their independence, citizens of modest means like yourself going about the daily business of urban survival, and occasionally the elaborate entourages that accompany wealthy patricians as they move through the city. The roadway itself is a marvel of Roman engineering, fitted stone blocks that have weathered generations of traffic, with raised sidewalks on either side that provide some separation between pedestrians and the wheeled vehicles that share the space. During daylight hours, heavy carts are prohibited from most city streets, but lighter vehicles still navigate the thoroughfares, hand carts pushed by vendors, litters carrying passengers who prefer not to walk, and the occasional official wagon marked with imperial insignia. The noise level rises steadily as you approach the more densely populated areas. Vendors call out their wares in multiple languages, Latin, Greek, and various provincial dialects, mixing in a constant babble of commercial persuasion. Fresh figs from Campania, the finest oil from Spain, wine that will make you forget your troubles, Children dart between the adults, playing games that involve considerable running and shouting. Dogs bark from doorways and alleys. Wheels rumble over stone. Hammers ring from workshops. The sound of urban life creates a constant background noise that varies in intensity but never completely disappears. The smells of the city layer themselves in complex combinations that change with each block you traverse. The clean scent of fresh bread gives way to the sharper aroma of fermented fish sauce from a garum production facility. The sweet smell of ripe fruit from a vendor's stall mingles with the earthy odor of pack animals and the acrid smoke from a blacksmith's forge. Underlying it all is the ever-present aroma of human habitation, cooking fires, unwashed bodies, and the accumulated sense of 1 million people living in close proximity. Your progress is steady but not swift. The sidewalks accommodate the natural pace of pedestrian traffic, but they also require constant attention to avoid collisions with other walkers, obstacles left by vendors, and the occasional pools of questionable liquid that accumulate in low spots despite the city's sophisticated drainage systems. You've learned to read the flow of foot traffic, anticipating where congestion will develop, and finding alternate routes through side streets and alleys when necessary. The architecture around you tells the story of Rome's growth and prosperity. Modest insulae like your own building, alternate with more substantial structures, warehouses with thick walls and small windows, shops with wooden shutters and tile roofs, workshops where the sounds of productive labor spill into the street. Occasionally you pass buildings that display the wealth and status of their owners' marble facades, bronze fittings, elaborate doorways guarded by slaves in matching tunics. Street vendors add another layer of complexity to navigation. They position themselves strategically at intersections and gathering places, spreading their wares on cloth laid directly on the stone pavement or arranging them in baskets and wooden trays. You step carefully around a woman selling small clay lamps, sidestep a man offering leather goods, and pause briefly to examine the wares of a vendor who specializes in bronze jewelry and small tools. The crowds thicken as you approach the Forum district. Here, the streets serve not just as transportation corridors but as social and commercial gathering spaces. People pause to conduct business, renew acquaintances, and engage in the kind of casual conversation that maintains the social fabric of urban life. You overhear fragments of discussions about grain prices, political gossip, family news, and the endless small dramas that make up daily existence in a complex society. Beggars position themselves at strategic points along the route, relying on the generosity of passers-by for their survival. Some are clearly disabled, missing limbs, blind eyes, or other visible afflictions that prevent them from working. Others appear to be temporarily down on their luck, still maintaining some dignity while seeking assistance. You drop a small copper coin into the bowl of an elderly man who sits quietly beside the road, neither demanding attention nor hiding his need. The architecture grows more impressive as you near the city center, with glimpses of marble columns and bronze statuary visible beyond the immediate surroundings of shops and apartment buildings. The Forum Romanum itself begins to dominate the horizon, a vast complex of temples, courts and public buildings that represents the political and religious heart of the greatest empire the world has ever known. As you continue your journey through Rome's streets, you become aware of the remarkable infrastructure that makes life possible for over 1 million inhabitants. The Romans have solved problems of urban living that won't be addressed again for more than 1,000 years, creating systems that function so smoothly they're almost invisible until you pause to consider their complexity and scope. The water that flows from public fountains throughout the city arrives through a network of aqueducts that stretches across hundreds of miles of countryside. 9 separate aqueduct lines bring fresh water from springs in the distant hills, each one an engineering marvel that maintains a precise gradient across valleys, through mountains and over rivers. The water you used for washing this morning traveled perhaps 50 miles from its source, flowing steadily downhill through channels lined with waterproof concrete. A Roman invention that hardens underwater and lasts for centuries. You pause at one of the public fountains that dot the city, watching the steady stream of clear water that flows constantly, day and night, regardless of season or weather. The fountain itself is a simple but elegant structure, a carved stone basin with bronze fittings that direct the water flow and prevent waste. Citizens fill jugs and amphora with practiced efficiency, understanding that this abundant supply of clean water is one of Rome's greatest advantages over other cities of the ancient world. The fountain's overflow doesn't simply drain away but feeds into the larger system of channels and pipes that carry wastewater and sewage away from populated areas. The Circus Maximus, Rome's great sewer, is large enough to navigate by boat and sophisticated enough to prevent the accumulation of dangerous gases through careful ventilation. What flows into the Tiber River is wastewater that has been processed through settling pools and filtration systems that remove most solid matter. Above your head, lead pipes carry water to the upper floors of buildings that can afford private connections to the aqueduct system. The Romans have mastered the art of pressurized water distribution, using techniques that won't be rediscovered until the Renaissance. The lead pipes, while we now know them to be dangerous, represent the cutting edge of ancient technology, malleable enough to be shaped around obstacles, durable enough to last for generations, and affordable enough to be used extensively throughout the city. The streets themselves demonstrate Roman mastery of urban planning and construction. The stones beneath your feet are fitted so precisely that water runs off quickly but doesn't pool in dangerous areas. The slightly crowned shape of the roadway directs runoff toward drains that connect to the larger sewer system. Even during the heaviest rains, Rome's streets remain passable because the drainage has been planned and executed with mathematical precision. The concrete used in Roman construction is another technological marvel that makes possible the grand architectural projects that dominate the city's skyline. Unlike modern concrete, Roman concrete actually grows stronger over time as seawater and volcanic ash react to create new crystalline structures. The Pantheon's massive dome, the great amphitheaters, and the sprawling bath complexes all depend on this revolutionary building material that allows for spans and shapes impossible with stone alone. As you walk, you notice the sophisticated systems that supply Rome with food and goods from across the known world. Warehouses throughout the city are designed with thick walls that maintain steady temperatures, protecting grain from spoilage and wine from excessive heat. Loading docks are positioned to take advantage of prevailing winds and water access. Storage facilities are organized with mathematical precision to maximize capacity while allowing efficient access to specific goods. The standardization of weights and measures throughout the empire makes possible the complex trade relationships that keep Rome supplied. Amphora of oil from Spain contains exactly the same volume as one from Greece or North Africa. Coins maintain consistent weight and purity regardless of where they're minted. Contracts written in Rome are enforceable in provinces thousands of miles away because legal and commercial standards have been unified across the known world. You pass a construction site where workers are using the Roman sophisticated understanding of leverage and mechanical advantage. Cranes powered by treadmills lift massive stones into place with precision that seems almost magical. The pulleys, gears, and counterweights represent centuries of accumulated knowledge about moving heavy objects efficiently and safely. These same principles are applied throughout the city in mills that grind grain, workshops that shape metal, and machines that process everything from cloth to olive oil. The heating systems in Rome's great bathhouses demonstrate another area of technological excellence. Hypercausts spaces beneath the floors where heated air circulates maintain comfortable temperatures even during winter months. The fuel efficiency of these systems, combined with their ability to heat enormous volumes of water and air, makes possible the elaborate bathing culture that defines Roman social life. Communication systems throughout the empire rely on Roman innovations in road building and organization. Messages travel along straight, well-maintained highways at speeds that won't be matched again until the development of railroads. Way stations provide fresh horses and supplies for official couriers. Milestones mark distances with mathematical precision. The phrase "all roads lead to Rome" reflects not just political centralization but genuine technological superiority in transportation infrastructure. Even the simple oil lamps that light Roman homes after dark represent sophisticated technology adapted for mass production. The clay is shaped in molds that allow for rapid manufacturing while maintaining consistent quality. The wicks are designed to burn efficiently without excessive smoke. The oil reservoirs are sized to provide predictable amounts of light for specific periods of time. As you continue toward your destination, you're surrounded by evidence of human ingenuity applied systematically to the problems of urban life. The Romans haven't simply built a large city maze, they've created systems that make large-scale urban civilization possible for the first time in human history. Every fountain, every drain, every paved street represents a solution to problems that other societies haven't even recognized, much less solved. The heat of midday begins to assert itself as you navigate Rome's crowded streets, and with it comes a gradual awareness of the various physical discomforts that accumulate over the course of a working day. Your shoulders ache slightly from the morning's labor at the docks, carrying those heavy amphorae of olive oil from barge to warehouse. Your feet, despite the protection of well-made sandals, feel the accumulated impact of walking on stone pavements that show no mercy to human joints and muscles. These minor aches and pains are the constant companions of working Romans, accepted as natural consequences of physical labor rather than medical conditions requiring treatment. The concept of preventive medicine exists mainly in the form of general lifestyle advice. Moderate eating, regular exercise, adequate sleep, and avoidance of obvious hazards. For specific injuries and illnesses, the approach is more reactive, dealing with problems as they arise rather than trying to prevent them. As you walk, you notice the various medical practitioners who serve Rome's population. A tooth drawer has set up his practice in a small booth near a busy intersection, his bronze forceps and collection of extracted teeth displayed prominently to advertise his services. The extracted teeth, yellowed and worn, tell stories of lives lived without sugar but also without modern dental care. Cavities filled with lead, infections that spread to the jaw, and the constant grinding that comes from eating bread made with stone-ground flour. Nearby, a bone setter examines the arm of a construction worker who suffered an injury when scaffolding collapsed. The treatment involves manipulation of the broken bone back into rough alignment, followed by splinting with wooden strips and linen bandages. There is no anesthesia available. The patient grips a leather strap between his teeth and endures the procedure with the stoic acceptance that Romans consider a virtue. Pain is viewed not as something to be eliminated, but as something to be endured with dignity. The pharmacopoeia available to Roman medical practitioners represents centuries of accumulated knowledge combined with considerable superstition and guesswork. Willow bark for pain relief. The Romans have discovered that it contains what we now know as aspirin, though they don't understand the chemical mechanism. Honey for wound treatment, its antibacterial properties are evident from observation, even without knowledge of bacteria. Moldy bread applied to infected cuts. Penicillin exists in nature, waiting to be rediscovered in a more systematic fashion. You pass a small shrine dedicated to Asclepius, the god of healing, where people leave offerings in hope of divine intervention for medical problems that human knowledge cannot address. Clay models of afflicted body parts hang from the shrine: arms, legs, eyes, internal organs, each representing someone's plea for relief from suffering. The boundary between medicine and religion is permeable in Rome, with healing involving both practical treatment and spiritual intervention. The public baths that you'll visit later in the day serve important health functions beyond simple cleanliness. The Roman understanding of circulation and muscle relaxation, while not scientifically precise, has led to bathing practices that genuinely promote health. The progression from hot to cold water, the massage with olive oil, and the social aspects that reduce stress all contribute to physical well-being in ways that Roman physicians appreciate without fully understanding. Mental health receives less systematic attention, though the Romans recognized certain patterns of behavior as problematic. Melancholia, what we might call depression, is treated with changes in diet, increased physical activity, and sometimes relocation to different climates. The concept of grief as a natural process is well established, with specific rituals and time periods allowed for mourning losses. Extreme behaviors might be attributed to divine possession, moral failings, or imbalances in the body's humors. Surgical procedures, when necessary, are performed with remarkable skill given the limitations of available technology. Roman military surgeons have developed sophisticated techniques for treating battlefield injuries: arrow extraction, amputation of damaged limbs, and repair of internal injuries. These skills filter into civilian practice, though surgery remains a last resort due to the high risk of infection and the absence of effective pain management. The four humors theory, Michael blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, provides the theoretical framework for most medical treatment. Illness is understood as an imbalance between these essential bodily fluids, with treatment aimed at restoring proper proportion. Bloodletting, induced vomiting, and various purgatives are common treatments based on this understanding. While often ineffective or harmful, the approach does provide a systematic framework for thinking about health and disease. Childbirth represents one of the greatest medical challenges in Roman society. Maternal mortality rates are high, and infant mortality is accepted as an unfortunate but normal aspect of family life. Midwives possess considerable practical knowledge about managing labor and delivery, but complications that would be easily treatable with modern techniques often prove fatal. The social and emotional support provided during childbirth may be as important as the medical care in determining outcomes. Dental care involves primarily tooth extraction when problems become unbearable. Some Romans attempt to clean their teeth with twigs or cloth, and toothache remedies include everything from herbal preparations to prayers and magical incantations. The wealthy might have gold dental work, but for most people, tooth loss is simply an expected part of aging. As you observe the various medical practitioners and patients around you, it becomes clear that Roman medicine operates within severe limitations but also demonstrates remarkable ingenuity in working within those constraints. Life expectancy is shorter than in modern times, but those who survive childhood often live to respectable ages. The key to health in Roman society lies less in sophisticated medical intervention than in the kind of moderate, physically active lifestyle that many Romans maintain by necessity rather than choice. Your business with Marcus Livius Drusus completed, and your new building token safely tucked into your belt pouch, you begin the journey back toward your neighborhood as the afternoon heat starts to diminish slightly. Your stomach reminds you that the morning's bread and watered wine, while adequate for starting the day, have long since been consumed by hours of physical activity. The time has come for cena, the main meal that will sustain you through the evening and into tomorrow's labors. Unlike the wealthy Romans who dine on elaborate multi-course feasts that stretch for hours, your evening meal follows the practical constraints of limited resources and simple cooking facilities. There are no kitchens in the insula where working people live. Michael's, the risk of fire in wooden buildings packed with tenants makes open flames too dangerous for casual use. Instead, you'll purchase prepared food from one of the many establishments that serve Rome's cooking needs. Your destination is a small thermopolium, Ars shop that specializes in hot, ready-to-eat meals for customers who cannot cook for themselves. These establishments fill an essential role in Roman urban life, providing nourishing food at reasonable prices for the hundreds of thousands of people who live in rooms too small and poorly equipped for food preparation. The shop you frequent is run by Gaius Valerius Flaccus, a freedman from Gaul whose mastery of simple filling dishes has built him a steady clientele among the working population of your district. The thermopolium occupies the ground floor of an insula much like your own, with a wide opening onto the street and large clay vessels built into a marble counter. These vessels, called dolia, are heated from below by carefully controlled fires and contain various stews, porridges, and cooked vegetables that simmer slowly throughout the day. The aromas that drift from the shop are simple but appealing: the earthy scent of lentils and barley, the sharp tang of vinegar used to preserve vegetables, and the comforting smell of bread warming near the fires. Flaccus himself greets regular customers with the easy familiarity of a man who understands his role in the neighborhood's daily rhythm. He's been operating this establishment for nearly a decade, having saved enough money from his previous work as a cook in a wealthy household to purchase his freedom and start his own business. His success represents the kind of modest upward mobility that's possible for industrious freedmen in Rome's complex but opportunity-rich economy. The meal you order is pulmentum, a thick porridge made from spelt, barley and lentils, seasoned with olive oil, salt and dried herbs. It's served in a wooden bowl that retains heat well, accompanied by a piece of bread for soaking up the liquid and a small portion of pickled vegetables that add sharpness and variety to the meal. The cost is reasonable, a few copper coins that represent fair value for nourishing food prepared by someone else's labor and fuel. You carry your meal to one of the small tables that Flaccus provides for customers who prefer to eat on the premises rather than taking food back to their rooms. The table is made of simple wood, worn smooth by countless meals and conversations, positioned to catch whatever breeze might stir in the warm evening air. Around you, other customers eat similar meals with the quiet concentration of people whose physical work has earned them genuine hunger. The pulmentum itself represents the kind of food that has sustained working Romans for generations, not elegant, not exotic, but nourishing and satisfying. The grains provide steady energy that will last through the evening, while the lentils add protein necessary for muscle repair after physical labor. The olive oil contributes essential fats and makes the meal more satisfying, while the salt replaces what's been lost through the day's sweating. The bread serves both as food and as utensil, its dense texture perfect for scooping portions of the porridge and absorbing the flavorful liquid that remains in the bowl. Roman bread making has evolved to produce loaves that complement the eating style of people who often lack metal utensils, with crusts thick enough to serve as handles and interiors absorbent enough to capture sauces and broths. The pickled vegetables, mostly cabbage and onions preserved in vinegar with herbs, provide essential nutrients that might otherwise be lacking in a diet heavy on grains and legumes. The preservation process makes these vegetables available year-round, regardless of growing seasons, and the vinegar aids digestion of the heavier elements of the meal. As you eat, the sounds of the neighborhood's evening routine create a gentle backdrop. Children play in the street, under the watchful eyes of older siblings, their games involving much running and laughter but little actual noise. Vendors call out end-of-day bargains on perishable goods that must be sold before spoiling. Neighbors greet each other and exchange the kind of casual conversation that maintains social bonds in close-knit communities. The wine you drink with your meal is the same light vintage from this morning, diluted with water in the evening proportion that Romans have found optimal for relaxation without intoxication. The slight alcohol content aids digestion and provides mild sedation that helps transition from the day's activity to the night's rest. The wine also serves as social lubricant, encouraging the kind of easy conversation that makes simple meals more enjoyable. Your fellow diners represent the diversity of Rome's working population, a mix of citizens, freedmen, and slaves eating evening meals during brief respites from their various labors. Conversations flow in Latin mixed with phrases from the dozens of languages spoken by people from across the empire. The atmosphere is comfortable rather than elegant, focused on the practical satisfaction of hunger rather than culinary sophistication. With your evening meal settling comfortably in your stomach, you find yourself drawn by the sounds of gathering crowds toward one of Rome's many venues for public entertainment. The Romans have elevated the provision of spectacles to an art form, understanding that a population fed and entertained is a population less likely to cause political trouble. Tonight, like most evenings when weather permits, various forms of amusement compete for the attention of citizens seeking relaxation after their day's labors. Your path takes you toward the Campus Martius, a large open area where temporary stages and seating areas are erected for theatrical performances, musical concerts, and various forms of popular entertainment. The permanent stone theaters are reserved for more formal occasions and higher-class audiences, but here in the Campus Martius, entertainment takes on a more democratic character, accessible to working people who cannot afford expensive tickets or elaborate dress. A crowd has gathered around a troupe of traveling performers who specialize in the kind of broad comedy that appeals to mixed audiences. The actors wear the traditional masks that immediately identify their character types: the foolish old man, the clever slave, the boastful soldier, the scheming parasite. Their performance draws heavily on stock situations and familiar jokes, requiring no sophisticated cultural knowledge to appreciate. The humor is physical, obvious, and often crude, designed to provoke laughter from people who have spent their day in physical labor and want entertainment that demands little mental effort. The lead actor, playing the role of a pompous freedman who has acquired wealth but not wisdom, delivers his lines with exaggerated gestures that can be seen clearly even from the back of the crowd. His character's pretensions to sophistication are repeatedly deflated by the clever slave, whose wit consistently outmaneuvers his social superior. The audience responds with the kind of laughter that comes from recognizing familiar social types and seeing pretension punctured by common sense. Between the formal theatrical performance and the crowd, vendors move constantly, selling simple refreshments and small items that enhance the entertainment experience. Roasted nuts, dried fruit, watered wine in small cups, and various suites provide the kind of casual sustenance that makes an evening's entertainment more enjoyable. Children dart between the adults, playing games inspired by the performance and occasionally earning coins by imitating the actors' gestures and expressions. As the comedy concludes to appreciative applause, attention shifts to another form of entertainment, a group of musicians who have set up near a fountain where the acoustics enhance their performance. Their instruments include a water organ, several types of flutes and percussion instruments that create rhythms complex enough to inspire dancing among those so inclined. The music draws from various traditions throughout the empire, mixing Roman melodies with Greek harmonies and rhythmic patterns that originated in Egypt or North Africa. The musical performance attracts a different kind of audience than the comedy people who appreciate the skill required to create harmonious sounds and who find relaxation in listening rather than laughing. Some audience members sit on the ground or on portable stools they've brought with them, while others stand in loose groups, swaying slightly to the rhythms and occasionally humming along with familiar melodies. A third entertainment option draws the more adventurous members of the evening crowd, informal betting on various contests of skill and chance. Men compete in throwing dice, with small stakes that add excitement without risking serious financial loss. Others test their skill at various physical challenges, lifting heavy stones, wrestling matches between volunteers or competitions to see who can throw a javelin closest to a designated target. These impromptu contests serve multiple social functions beyond simple entertainment. They allow men to display their physical prowess in relatively safe contexts, provide opportunities for social bonding through shared risk and competition, and create the kind of mild excitement that makes ordinary evenings memorable. The betting is generally modest. A few copper coins or simple wagers like buying drinks for the winner's friends. The evening entertainment scene also includes more sophisticated options for those with cultural pretensions or educated tastes. A philosopher has attracted a small but attentive audience near one of the temples, delivering an informal lecture on Stoic principles and their application to daily life. His audience consists mainly of freedmen and ambitious slaves who seek to improve their social status through education, as well as a few citizens who genuinely appreciate intellectual discourse. The philosophical discussion focuses on practical ethics rather than abstract theory, how to maintain dignity in the face of adversity, how to find satisfaction in modest circumstances, how to deal with difficult people in positions of authority. The philosopher, a Greek freedman who supports himself through teaching and occasional lectures, speaks in clear, simple Latin that makes complex ideas accessible to his working-class audience. As the evening progresses, the various entertainment options begin to blend together as people move from one venue to another, sampling different forms of amusement according to their interests and energy levels. The comedy audience drifts toward the musicians, some of the gamblers pause to listen to the philosopher, and children run freely between all the different groups, absorbing lessons about adult social behavior through observation and imitation. The entertainment serves purposes beyond mere amusement. It provides opportunities for social interaction across class lines, creates shared cultural experiences that bind the community together, and offers peaceful outlets for energies that might otherwise find expression in less constructive ways. The Romans understand that a city of 1 million people requires not just bread and water, but also the kind of shared pleasures that make urban life bearable and even enjoyable. As the evening's entertainment winds down and you begin to consider the journey back to your insula, you become aware of a commotion near one of the side streets that branch off from the Campus Martius. A small crowd has gathered around what appears to be a legal dispute being resolved in the informal but effective manner that characterizes much of Roman justice at the street level. The incident provides an unexpected glimpse into how law and order function in a city too large and complex for formal legal proceedings to handle every dispute. The disagreement involves Marcus Flavius Sabinus, a wine merchant, and Quintus Hortensius Cato, a customer who claims that amphora of wine he purchased yesterday had already turned to vinegar before he opened it. Sabinus insists that the wine was sound when sold and suggests that Cato must have stored it improperly or waited too long before consumption. The dispute has attracted the attention of nearby citizens, some of whom know both parties and can offer testimony about their respective reputations for honesty in business dealings. What unfolds is not a formal trial, but rather a community-based process of conflict resolution that draws on Roman legal principles while adapting them to the practical needs of ordinary people who cannot afford professional legal representation or formal court proceedings. The gathering crowd includes several individuals whose opinions carry weight in the neighborhood: Lucius Cornelius Maximus, a freedman who operates a successful bakery and is known for fair dealing; Gaius Valerius Rufus, an elderly citizen who has lived in the area for decades and witnessed countless similar disputes; and Claudia Tertia, a woman whose family has operated shops in this district for 3 generations. The process begins with each party stating their case clearly and without interruption. Sabinus explains that he has been selling wine for 15 years without significant complaints, that he tests each batch before offering it for sale, and that he stores his inventory in properly ventilated warehouses that maintain stable temperatures. He produces several other customers who purchased wine from the same batch and report no problems with quality or taste. Cato responds that he has been purchasing wine from various merchants for many years and knows the difference between wine that has turned after purchase and wine that was already spoiled when sold. He describes the specific taste and smell that indicated fermentation problems, demonstrates his knowledge of proper wine storage, and points out that he returned to complain within hours of opening the amphora rather than waiting days or weeks. The community arbitrators listen carefully to both presentations, asking occasional questions to clarify specific points. Their investigation reveals that this particular batch of wine came from a vineyard that has experienced problems with fermentation in recent months due to unusual weather patterns during the growing season. While Sabinus may not have been deliberately dishonest, his quality control procedures may not have detected subtle problems that became apparent only after the wine was opened and exposed to air. The resolution that emerges reflects Roman legal principles adapted to practical circumstances. Sabinus agrees to replace the spoiled wine with a different vintage of equivalent value, while Cato agrees to purchase his next 3 amphora from Sabinus at a slight discount to compensate the merchant for the cost of replacement. Both parties also agree to spread word in the neighborhood that the dispute has been resolved fairly, protecting both the merchant's reputation and the customer's standing as a reasonable person. This informal legal process illustrates several important aspects of Roman justice as it functions at the street level. First, the emphasis is on practical resolution rather than punishment. The goal is to restore relationships and prevent future problems rather than to establish guilt or exact retribution. Second, community reputation plays a crucial role in determining credibility. Both parties must consider how their behavior in this dispute will affect their standing with neighbors and business associates. Third, the process demonstrates the Roman genius for adapting formal legal principles to practical circumstances. The concepts of evidence, testimony, and proportional remedy are all present, but they're applied flexibly rather than rigidly. The arbitrators draw on their knowledge of Roman law while also considering local customs and the specific needs of their community. The resolution also reflects the Roman understanding that commerce depends on trust, and that maintaining business relationships often matters more than winning individual disputes. Soberness could have insisted that the sale was final and refused any accommodation, but doing so would have damaged his reputation and potentially cost him future customers. Cato could have demanded full compensation plus damages, but pursuing maximum advantage would have marked him as an unreasonable person in future dealings. As the crowd disperses and the two parties shake hands to seal their agreement, you observe how efficiently this informal legal system has functioned. No lawyers were involved, no formal fees were paid, and no appeals process was necessary. The dispute was resolved in less than an hour through community involvement and mutual recognition that ongoing relationships matter more than short-term advantage. This street-level justice coexists with Rome's formal legal system, which handles more serious crimes and disputes involving larger sums of money or higher status individuals. The formal courts, with their professional judges and complex procedures, serve essential functions in maintaining order throughout the empire. But for ordinary people dealing with everyday problems, community-based resolution often proves more accessible, affordable, and ultimately satisfactory than formal legal proceedings. As evening deepens and you finally begin your journey back toward your insula, you find yourself passing through one of Rome's many sacred districts, where temples, shrines, and altars create a landscape of religious obligation that permeates every aspect of daily life. The Romans have developed perhaps the most systematically inclusive approach to religion in the ancient world, incorporating deities and practices from across their vast empire while maintaining the traditional observances that have supposedly guaranteed their success as a civilization. Your path takes you past a small shrine dedicated to the Lares Compitalas, the protective spirits of the crossroads who guard travelers and ensure safe passage through the city's complex network of streets and alleys. The shrine consists of a simple stone altar surrounded by offerings left by people seeking protection for journeys both long and short. You pause briefly to drop a small copper coin into the offering bowl and murmur a brief prayer for continued safety in your daily travels through Rome's sometimes unpredictable streets. This casual act of devotion represents just one layer of the complex religious obligations that structure Roman life. Unlike modern concepts of religion as a private matter of personal belief, Roman religious practice is fundamentally public and communal, woven into the social fabric in ways that make separation between sacred and secular activities virtually impossible. Every neighborhood has its protective deities, every profession its patron gods, every household its domestic spirits that require regular attention and propitiation. The temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the nearby Capitoline Hill looms over the city as a constant reminder of the state cult that unifies the empire under divine protection. Jupiter serves as the supreme protector of Rome itself, the guarantor of the city's continued success and expansion. Regular festivals in his honor draw participants from throughout the city, creating shared religious experiences that reinforce social solidarity and political loyalty. But Jupiter represents only the most visible level of a religious system that extends from grand state ceremonies down to the most intimate household rituals. Your own daily religious obligations begin each morning with a brief acknowledgement of your household gods, the Lares who protect your dwelling, the Penates who guard your food stores, and the Genius who embodies your personal divine spark. These domestic deities require only simple offerings, a few drops of wine, a small piece of bread, a brief prayer, but their neglect could bring misfortune on your entire household. Your work at the docks brings you into contact with Neptunus, the god of the sea and all waters, whose protection is essential for the safe arrival of the ships that bring goods to Rome from across the Mediterranean. The dock workers maintain a small shrine where daily offerings ensure continued divine favor for their dangerous and economically vital work. Accidents at the docks are often attributed to inadequate attention to these religious obligations, making participation both a matter of personal safety and professional solidarity. The seasonal cycle brings regular festivals that punctuate the year with religious observances designed to maintain the proper relationship between the human and divine worlds. The Perilia in April celebrates the founding of Rome and ensures continued growth and prosperity for the city. The Lemuria in May honors the spirits of the dead and prevents their interference with the living. The Saturnalia in December temporarily reverses social hierarchies, allowing slaves and masters to exchange roles in a celebration that reinforces social bonds while providing a safe outlet for tensions. These public festivals serve multiple functions beyond their obvious religious purposes. They provide entertainment and social interaction for people whose daily lives involve hard work and limited recreation. They create shared experiences that bind together Rome's diverse population of citizens, freedmen and slaves from dozens of different cultures and ethnic backgrounds. They also demonstrate the state's commitment to maintaining divine favor through proper ritual observance, reinforcing the political legitimacy of imperial rule. Your personal religious practice also includes attention to deities imported from other parts of the empire. Isis, the Egyptian goddess of healing and protection, has attracted a significant following among Rome's working population, particularly women seeking assistance with childbirth and family concerns. Mithras, the Persian god of light and truth, appeals especially to soldiers and men in dangerous occupations. These foreign deities complement rather than compete with traditional Roman gods, creating a syncretic religious landscape that reflects the empire's cultural diversity. The emperor cult adds another layer of religious obligation that combines traditional veneration of ancestors with political loyalty to the current ruler. Nero, like his predecessors, is honored as a divine figure whose continued health and success ensure the prosperity of the entire empire. Participation in imperial religious ceremonies is viewed as a demonstration of political loyalty as much as religious devotion, making these observances effectively mandatory for anyone seeking to maintain good standing in Roman society. The priests who oversee these various religious obligations represent different levels of professional specialization and social status. The flamens, who serve major state deities like Jupiter and Mars, hold positions of considerable prestige and political influence. Local priests who maintain neighborhood shrines and conduct routine ceremonies occupy more modest positions but perform essential functions in maintaining community religious life. Augurs, who interpret divine will through observation of natural phenomena, provide guidance for important decisions affecting both individuals and the state. As you continue through the sacred district, you become aware of the subtle but constant pressure to demonstrate proper religious observance through visible participation in ritual activities. Failure to acknowledge the appropriate deities at the appropriate times marks someone as potentially dangerous to community welfare, since divine displeasure with individuals can bring misfortune on entire neighborhoods. Religious conformity thus becomes a form of social insurance, protecting both personal and collective interests through careful attention to divine requirements. The journey back to your neighborhood takes you through areas where the complex stratification of Roman society becomes visible in the architecture, dress, and behavior of the people you encounter. Roman civilization has created perhaps the most elaborate and precisely defined social hierarchy in human history, with dozens of distinct legal and social categories that determine everything from legal rights to dinner party seating arrangements. Understanding and navigating this hierarchy represents one of the most crucial survival skills for anyone seeking to prosper or even simply to avoid trouble in the imperial capital. Your own position in this elaborate system is that of a plebeian citizen's freeborn legally Roman, but without the wealth, family connections, or political influence that would elevate you to higher social ranks. This status provides certain protections and privileges while also imposing specific obligations and limitations. You cannot be enslaved for debt, tortured during legal proceedings, or executed without trial, but you also cannot hold high political office, wear purple clothing, or expect preferential treatment in business dealings with your social superiors. As you walk through the more prosperous districts that lie between the Campus Martius and your own neighborhood, you observe the subtle but unmistakable signs that mark social distinctions. The width of the purple stripe on a man's toga indicates his precise rank within the senatorial or equestrian orders. The number of slaves in an entourage signals the wealth and importance of their master. The materials and workmanship of jewelry, sandals, and clothing communicate social messages that every Roman learns to read from childhood. You step aside respectfully as a small procession passes a wealthy merchant named Lucius Cassius Longinus, traveling with his family and household staff to an evening social engagement. His toga is made of the finest wool, bleached to perfect whiteness and draped with the kind of mathematical precision that requires considerable practice to achieve. His wife Claudia Marcella wears a stola of silk dyed with expensive purple that probably cost more than you earn in several months. Their children are attended by Greek-speaking pedagogues whose education and cultural refinement mark them as valuable household assets. This display of wealth and status serves multiple purposes beyond simple ostentation. It communicates Longinus's success in business and his family's social position to potential partners, clients, and competitors. It demonstrates his ability to maintain the lifestyle expected of someone in his economic bracket, reassuring associates that he possesses the resources necessary for reliable business relationships. It also provides employment for dozens of skilled craftsmen, servants, and specialists whose livelihoods depend on serving the needs of Rome's wealthy classes. Your own interactions with this social hierarchy follow patterns established by centuries of tradition and legal precedent. When you conducted business with Marcus Livius Drusus earlier today, the transaction was colored by your respective positions as tenant and landlord, but also by your shared status as citizens and freedmen, minds legal equals despite the economic inequality between you. Your relationship with Lucius Cornelius Balbus, your supervisor at the docks, reflects both his authority in workplace matters and your mutual recognition as free men earning honest livings through physical labor. The patron-client relationships that structure much of Roman social interaction operate on principles of mutual obligation and long-term reciprocity. Wealthy patrons provide protection, employment opportunities, and occasional financial assistance to their clients, while clients offer political support, personal loyalty, and the kind of social deference that reinforces the patron's status and influence. These relationships can span generations, creating extended networks of mutual dependence that provide stability in an otherwise uncertain economic environment. You participate in these networks at a modest level through your relationship with Gaius Antonius Sabinus, a successful grain merchant who occasionally employs you for special cargo handling assignments at higher wages than your regular dock work provides. Sabinus values your reliability and physical strength, while you appreciate his willingness to recommend you for additional work opportunities and to provide character references when needed. The relationship remains respectful but clearly defined. Minds you address him as Dominus and stand when he enters a room, while he treats you with the courtesy appropriate to a free citizen performing valuable services. The political dimensions of social hierarchy become evident during election seasons when candidates for various magistracies compete for the votes of citizens like yourself. While your single vote carries little individual weight, the collective political power of Rome's working population cannot be ignored by ambitious politicians. Candidates seeking office regularly appear in your neighborhood, making speeches about grain distribution, public works projects, and other issues that directly affect working people's daily lives. These political interactions follow their own elaborate protocols. Candidates dress in special togas that have been whitened with chalk, the toga candida, that gives us the word candidate, and are accompanied by slaves, whose job is to whisper the names and personal details of citizens they encounter, allowing the politicians to greet voters with apparent personal familiarity. The speeches themselves blend genuine policy proposals with the kind of crowd-pleasing rhetoric that demonstrates the speaker's understanding of popular concerns. Your participation in this political process extends beyond simply casting votes. Roman politics operates through personal relationships and public demonstrations of support, so attendance at political rallies, participation in civic ceremonies, and visible presence during important public events all contribute to the complex calculations that determine electoral outcomes. Politicians notice which neighborhoods turn out for their speeches, and which social groups respond enthusiastically to their proposals, adjusting their campaigns accordingly. The consequences of social miscalculation can be severe in a society where personal reputation determines economic opportunities and political protection. A worker who offends a powerful patron might find himself excluded from employment opportunities throughout the city. A citizen who supports the wrong political faction during troubled times might face legal harassment or economic retaliation. A freedman who fails to show appropriate deference to former masters might discover that other wealthy Romans are reluctant to conduct business with someone who doesn't understand proper social boundaries. The sun has finally set completely as you approach your neighborhood, and with the disappearance of natural light, Rome transforms into a fundamentally different and considerably more dangerous place. The absence of street lighting beyond the occasional oil lamp in doorways and shop windows means that navigation becomes a matter of memory, careful attention to familiar landmarks, and a considerable amount of luck. The same streets that bustled with commercial activity and social interaction during the day now harbor shadows that could conceal any number of threats to unwary travelers. Your route back to your insula takes you through increasingly narrow and winding passages as you move away from the main thoroughfares toward the residential districts where working people live. These smaller streets, barely wide enough for two people to pass comfortably, become treacherous in darkness. Uneven paving stones that are minor inconveniences during daylight become serious hazards when invisible. Drainage channels that efficiently carry away rainwater during storms become ankle-breaking traps for those who step carelessly. Even familiar territory requires constant attention and significantly slower progress than the same journey would demand in daylight. The sounds of the nocturnal city create an unsettling symphony that contrasts sharply with the organized bustle of daytime commerce. Dogs bark incessantly from courtyards and alleyways, responding to sounds and scents that human senses cannot detect. Cats yowl from rooftops in territorial disputes or mating rituals. Occasionally, human voices drift through the darkness, sometimes conversations between late-returning workers, sometimes arguments that might indicate domestic disputes or criminal activity, sometimes the kind of inexplicable shouting that suggests mental disturbance or excessive wine consumption. The vigils, Rome's combination police force and fire brigade, patrol the streets in groups of 6 or 8 men, carrying torches and basic firefighting equipment while maintaining order through their presence rather than active intervention. Their primary concern is preventing and controlling fires, which represent the greatest threat to densely populated residential areas where wooden buildings share walls and cooking fires burn in close proximity to flammable materials. Criminal activity receives attention only when it directly threatens public safety or involves significant property damage. As you navigate the darkened streets, you become aware of other people moving through the shadows with varying degrees of stealth and legitimate purpose. Some are workers like yourself, returning late from extended shifts or overtime employment. Others are slaves conducting evening errands for their masters, carrying messages or fetching supplies that require travel after normal business hours. A few are clearly engaged in activities that they prefer to conduct away from daylight scrutiny. Not necessarily criminal, but not entirely respectable either. The threat of robbery exists but should not be exaggerated. Most thieves prefer targets who appear wealthy enough to make the risk worthwhile, and your simple clothing and modest possessions mark you as someone unlikely to carry significant amounts of money or valuable items. The greater danger comes from random violence perpetrated by drunken groups looking for entertainment, desperate individuals driven to crime by hunger or debt, or the occasional mentally disturbed person whose behavior becomes unpredictable in the anonymity that darkness provides. Your own building comes into view as a familiar silhouette against the star-filled sky, its 7 stories creating a distinctive profile that you can recognize even in minimal light. The ground floor bakery shows a faint glow from banked fires that will be rekindled before dawn for the next day's bread production. A few windows on upper floors show the flickering light of oil lamps, indicating tenants who are still awake for various reasons. Late returning workers, mothers caring for sick children, or simply people who find sleep elusive in the summer heat. The climb to your 4th floor room requires careful attention to the wooden stairs which creak and sag in patterns you know by heart but which could betray you if fatigue or distraction causes a misstep. The stairwell is completely dark except for occasional slivers of light that escape from under doors or through gaps in walls. You feel your way upward, one hand on the wall for guidance and the other extended slightly forward to detect any unexpected obstacles. Your room, when you finally reach it, represents safety and privacy after a day spent in constant interaction with other people. The familiar sense of your own possessions and the particular combination of wood, wool, and human habitation that marks your personal space provide psychological comfort that helps transition from the day's alertness to the night's rest. You light your oil lamp carefully, using a flint and steel to create sparks that ignite a small piece of prepared tinder, then transfer the flame to the lamp's wick. The lamp's light, while limited, transforms your small room from invisible darkness to visible, manageable space. You can see your possessions in their accustomed places, check for any disturbances that might indicate unwanted visitors, and begin the evening routines that prepare your body and mind for sleep. The light also provides security. Most criminal activity depends on darkness for concealment, and even a small flame can deter opportunistic theft or assault. Preparing for sleep in Rome requires attention to both physical comfort and personal safety. You secure your door with the simple wooden bar that prevents casual intrusion, though it would not stop anyone truly determined to gain entry. You arrange your few valuable possessions in places where they would be difficult for thieves to find quickly in darkness. You prepare your chamber pot for nighttime use, since venturing outside after dark involves risks that outweigh the benefits of outdoor sanitation facilities. The sounds of the building settling into nighttime routines filter through the thin walls. Conversations between family members, children being settled into sleep, the creaking and shifting that wooden buildings produce as temperatures cool and materials contract. These familiar sounds provide reassurance that you are surrounded by other people pursuing the same goal of safe rest, creating a sense of community even within the privacy of individual rooms. As you settle onto your straw sleeping mat and extinguish your oil lamp, allowing the familiar darkness to envelop your small room, your mind naturally turns to reflection on the day that has passed and the larger patterns of existence that define life in Nero's Rome. You have survived another complete cycle of the activities that sustain human life in the greatest city the world has ever known. Work, sustenance, social interaction, entertainment, rest, benone. Termite carries a subtle undercurrent of unease that distinguishes it from the countless similar days that have preceded it. The faint smell of smoke that you first noticed this morning has grown slightly stronger throughout the day, though so gradually that you might have missed the change if not for the accumulated evidence of your senses. The conversations you overheard in the streets, at the docks, and during your evening meal contained more references than usual to fires in distant parts of the city, though nothing that seemed to require immediate concern from residents of your particular district. The vigils appeared slightly more numerous and alert than typical, though their behavior suggested heightened vigilance rather than active emergency response. These small signs, individually insignificant, combine to create an impression that tomorrow might bring changes to the comfortable routines that have defined your existence in Rome. You have lived through enough seasons, enough cycles of political upheaval and social transformation, to recognize the subtle shifts in atmosphere that sometimes precede larger disruptions. The city has a rhythm, a collective heartbeat that you have learned to sense through years of daily immersion in its streets, markets and neighborhoods. Your life in Rome represents both the opportunities and limitations that define existence for ordinary people in extraordinary times. You enjoy freedoms and securities that would be unimaginable for most people in most places throughout human history. Access to clean water, protection under law, participation in commerce that spans continents, exposure to cultural achievements that rival anything the world has produced. Yet these advantages come within a system that also imposes constraints, demands conformity, and subjects individual welfare to forces beyond personal control. The emperor whose name defines this era represents both the pinnacle of human achievement and the potential for catastrophic failure that lurks within any system that concentrates enormous power in the hands of individuals who may or may not possess the wisdom and restraint necessary to wield it responsibly. Nero's rule has brought both magnificent cultural achievements and disturbing signs of instability that thoughtful observers cannot entirely ignore. The architectural marvels that surround you, the aqueducts that bring water, the roads that facilitate commerce, the theaters that provide entertainment, the temples that honor the gods represent accumulated knowledge and effort spanning many generations. Each stone block, each bronze fitting, each carefully engineered joint embodies the labor and intelligence of people whose names have been forgotten but whose contributions continue to shape daily existence for millions of inhabitants throughout the empire. Your own work at the docks connects you to this larger enterprise of maintaining and expanding Roman civilization. The amphorae of olive oil that you moved from barge to warehouse this morning will eventually nourish families throughout the city, providing essential nutrition that sustains the human energy required for all other activities. The grain that other workers unload will become bread that feeds everyone from slaves to senators. The wine, cloth, metals and manufactured goods that flow through the port represent the complex web of relationships that bind the empire together. Yet beneath this impressive surface of order and prosperity lies the fundamental precariousness that characterizes all human enterprises. Cities burn, emperors die, armies rebel, crops fail, diseases spread, and the systems that seem permanent can prove to be more fragile than their creators imagined. The same technological and organizational capabilities that make Rome great also create vulnerabilities that could amplify disasters beyond anything that smaller, simpler societies might experience. The social hierarchies that provide structure and stability also create tensions and resentments that periodically erupt into violence. The economic systems that generate wealth and opportunity also produce inequality and desperation. The political arrangements that maintain order also concentrate power in ways that can lead to abuse and corruption. The religious practices that bind communities together also create conflicts between different groups who honor different gods or interpret divine will in contradictory ways. Your personal survival and modest prosperity depend on the continuation of patterns that have persisted for generations but are not guaranteed to persist indefinitely. The skills that make you valuable as a dock worker, the relationships that provide security and opportunity, the routines that make daily life manageable. All of these could be disrupted by changes in imperial policy, economic conditions, military circumstances, or simply the kind of random disasters that occasionally reshape human history. As sleep begins to claim your consciousness, you carry with you the satisfaction of another day successfully navigated, and the quiet confidence that comes from understanding your place within larger systems that, for all their flaws and uncertainties, have provided the framework for a meaningful and reasonably secure existence. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and new opportunities, but it will also bring the familiar rhythms of work, social interaction, and simple pleasures that make life worth living. The city sleeps around you, a million hearts beating in the darkness, a million dreams taking shape in minds temporarily freed from the constraints of waking consciousness. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and falls silent. A baby cries briefly and is comforted. The night watchers continue their patrols. The bakers prepare for tomorrow's bread, and the eternal city maintains its patient vigil over the empire that has made it the center of the known world. In your dreams, you may glimpse the future that awaits this civilization, the transformations that will reshape everything you consider permanent and inevitable. But for now, there is only the present moment. The straw beneath your body, the wool covering your skin, the gentle sounds of a great city at rest, and the deep satisfaction that comes from having lived another day fully within the magnificent, dangerous, endlessly fascinating reality of life in ancient Rome.